Hi everyone, today I'll be presenting an introduction to Slack app development and go over how to program a simple bot. So here's a brief outline of today's presentation. First, I'll be giving some background on Slack and then go over how to build a Slack app and how to program a Slack bot. And then after that, I'll show you a sample bot that you can make as well that gives information about COVID-19. And at the end, I'll briefly go over the project that I've been working on, which is the Gene and Drug Slack bot. So since we use Slack every day for the lab, we're all pretty familiar with it. It's a tool for group collaboration, and at its core, it's an instant messaging system based on channels that can be organized by project, team, or any other way that the company or group might find useful. The original premise of Slack was that it could replace email, text, and instant messaging for teams and keep all those communication styles together in one app. And while this might not necessarily be the reality of Slack today, it's clear that something that might have once been sent around as a thread of emails is now able to be sent much faster and easier while being compiled in a centralized and user-friendly platform. And while putting together this presentation, I found out that Slack actually stands for Searchable Log of All Conversation and Knowledge. So going off the last point, one of the main goals of Slack is to not only centralize and streamline, but also store everyday communication between teams. And over the past couple months, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the demand for remote working has increased exponentially, and consequently, Slack has experienced very rapid user growth. What was once just another tool that teams used has become the central hub of communication as the workspace has shifted from offices to people's homes. And now, rather than walking over to someone and asking a question, your best bet is posting it on Slack. And according to a series of tweets from the CEO of Slack, Stuart Butterfield, the company was at 1 million simultaneously connected users in 2015. And 5 years later, in March 2020, they reported 10 million users. And from there, the company grew to 11 million 1 week later, and then 12.5 million users the following week. And the figure here was something that he tweeted, and it shows the trend in number of created work teams from January 3rd to March 23rd of this year. And as you can see, after March 12th, which was when most companies started going remote, there was a huge spike in the number of work teams created. And I thought that this was really interesting because especially when you compare it to the dotted blue line, which is the seasonal trend based on the prior 2 years, it's pretty obvious that this pandemic has had a really big impact on the company and number of users as a whole. So one of the largest appeals of Slack is that the program allows users to customize their workspace. And not only can you change the actual display of the screen and add different channels, but there are over 2,200 apps that can be added. And this allows many outside applications that groups use, such as Google Drive, GitHub, Zoom, and many others to be integrated right into the Slack workspace. And another feature is that the Slack API, which allows users to create their own applications and automate different processes through a tool that is compatible with many frameworks, applications, and services. And this allows you to do things like send alerts or automate notifications, or even create an app to get information about genes and drugs. And overall, the API allows workspaces to be truly customized to the needs based on work groups and the different field that they might be in. So today I'll be walking you through how to create a Slack app and also cover the basics on how to program it. And by the end, you'll have a fully functioning app. So first thing you're going to want to do is go to this Slack API page to create an app. And it's pretty simple to do. To get to this page, you can either type in this URL or just Google Slack apps, and it should be the first link. And you're going to want to click Start Building. And next, this pop-up will appear. And you'll first just want to enter a name for your bot. So in this case, I just called it Tutorial Bot, and you can always change it later, so no pressure to come up with something really great right now. And you're also going to want to add it to a development Slack workspace. And for my case, since I was building a bot this summer, I created a separate workspace where I could just test all my different bots. So I didn't accidentally just like flood the labs workspace. So if you want to create a new workspace to test your bot, you could do that as well. So then you're going to want to click Create App. So now you have an app, and it can't do anything yet, but we're going to start to do things to allow it to do that. So this is the app landing page, and this is where you're going to find all the information about your app. So what we want to pay attention to is under settings, basic information, and then under features / commands, OAuth and permissions, and event subscriptions. So in order to start configuring our app, we have to decide what we want it to be able to do. And to do this, we're going to go to the OAuth and permissions section. And after you click on that, you're going to want to scroll down where you're going to find the scope section. So scopes are essentially what give your app permission to perform functionality in your Slack workspace. They govern the app's capabilities and permissions, so it'll allow your app to recognize different events, such as read messages or see if someone was added to a channel, and perform actions like write in a chat or react to a message. And in most cases, you're going to want to add bot token scopes rather than user token scopes, which are over here, because the one time you might want to use user token scopes is when you want the app to act on behalf of a user. So let's say you had to do something like sign into a class every day for college or something. You could program your bot to post for you. But in our case, we just want the bot to act on its own. So for this tutorial, the ones we're going to want to add are channels history, which allows the bot to look at the different messages that has been sent in a channel, chat write, which allows it to send messages in a channel, commands, which allows you to add commands to the bot, and IM history, which is really similar to channels history, but now the bot can also look at direct messages between different users. So once you do that, after adding these different scopes, you can now install the app to your workspace. So you're just going to want to click Install the Workspace, and you're going to be brought to this page. And basically, it's just saying that your bot is requesting permission to access your workspace, and you're just going to want to click Allow. And now your app will be installed into your workspace. But before we can start doing anything, we have to collect some important pieces of information. So after you've installed it and you're brought back to this app page, under OAuth and permissions, there's going to be a new section with your bot token. So you're going to want to copy this piece of information because it represents like the permissions delegated to your app by the installing user. And it's going to allow you to basically control your bot. So keep this piece of information safe because if someone has it, they'll be able to control your bot. And if you accidentally like upload it to GitHub or something, it's okay because Slack will just regenerate a new one and send you an email saying that it's disabled. So keep it safe. And the next piece of information you're going to want to get is the Slack signing secret. And this is under basic information, and you're just going to want to scroll down and it'll be over here so you can copy that. And what this does is basically just make sure that all the events that are coming into your app are like authentic. And it's basically another way to help keep your app secure. So once you get those two pieces of information, we are ready to start programming the bot. There's a link to the GitHub repo that you can copy, or you can follow the following steps that I'll describe to just create a new project on your own computer. So in Terminal, you're going to want to create a new project folder and set up a virtual environment by following the following pieces of code. You can just copy that and then open up your code in whichever code editor you want. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using Python, and you're going to want to make sure you have an updated version because the different libraries we're going to use just require a newer version. So you can either create a requirements file or just manually install them. But the first thing we're going to use is called Slack Client. And this is a developer kit for interfacing with the Slack web API on Python. And this basically just allows you to take advantage of the flexibility of Python to get your project up and running as quickly as possible. And the next package we're going to be using is the Slack Events API, which is a Python-based solution to receive and parse events from the Slack Events API. And this basically allows you to easily process the Slack events by simply attaching functions to event listeners. And both of these packages just make it a lot easier to use the Slack APIs and program your bot in general. And we're also going to be using Flask to set up our app framework. So next thing you're going to want to do is create an app file. So we have to first set up this application to be able to handle events from Slack. So if you copy these pieces of code, the first section is basically just importing the different dependencies. And then the next part is going to initialize a Flask app to host the event server. And then the last part is going to initialize a web API client. And then you're also going to just want to execute the code and whatever port you decide. And you'll notice here that your Slack signing secret and SlashBot token are going to be retrieved from your environment. So the next thing we have to do is add those to our virtual environment. And you can do this by just saying export SlashBot token and then whatever you copied before, and then same thing with the Slack signing secret. And now we can run our file. And one thing that we have to do before we can go back to Slack and start programming our bot is that we have to set up a tunnel to we have to tunnel requests from a public URL to our machine. And the easiest way that I have found to do this is by using ngrok to set up a tunnel. And it's pretty easy to set up if you don't already have it installed, but basically you can follow the link on this or you can just Google ngrok and then download it. And then once you set that all up, you're just going to want to go into the whatever folder that it's in, and then in a new terminal window, just type in the following piece of code here, and whatever the number represents whatever port you're running your program on. And then you're going to want to copy the HTTPS URL because that's the one that Slack is going to be using. So if you go back to the page for your bot, under event subscriptions, you're going to want to turn on enable subscriptions. And then under the request URL, you're now going to want to put that ngrok URL, but at the end of it, you're going to want to append /slack/events. And this is just going to be able to send it to your application because that's how we set it up before. And now we have everything that we need to start programming it. So next thing we need to do is subscribe to bot events so that the bot can be listening for different things in Slack. So if you click on subscribe to bot events, you are going to be brought to this section. And an event is essentially anything that happens in a Slack workspace. So we want our bot to just listen for specific things, because if it's listening to everything, it might start responding to, like, if somebody's adding themselves to a channel or a new group is created, and we don't necessarily want that. So for this tutorial, just add message.channels and message.im. And this is just going to allow the bot to be listening for whenever a message is posted. So that's either in a channel or in a direct message channel. And if you decide later that you want to add other bot events, there are required scopes that are associated with each bot event, but it'll be added automatically for you. So next thing I'm going to go over is the type of data that gets sent to your application. So as you can see, it's sent in like a dictionary format. So when we're parsing through the event data that gets sent to our application, it's pretty simple to access different parts of it. But what we're going to want to be paying attention to is the event part, because this is what's going to give us information about the text of the message and the user who sent it and the channel it was sent in. But yeah, just so you become familiar with the data that's being sent. And now we can start programming the bot to do something. So let's say we want to make our bot post hi there whenever a message event occurs. So in order to do this, you can copy the following piece of code. And basically what you're doing here is turning on the Slack events adapter and creating a function that'll take in the data that gets sent to your application. And as I mentioned before, you can access different parts of the data. So the message event, we can call that the message. And then for channel, you can access the channel of it. And then under the chat post message, this is the function that's going to allow you to easily post a message to your channel. So the parameters that this function takes in is channel and text. So we can just set channel as the same one as before, and text is going to be hi there. And then we're just going to have it make the response. And as you can see here, it's posting hi there, but essentially we've created a loop where it's just going to keep posting it forever, because when the bot posts hi there, that's another message event that gets sent. So it's going to recognize each and every time, and it'll just keep posting it. But it's okay, because like any other function that you write, you can add conditions to it. So let's say we want to make the bot only post hi there when it's mentioned by the user. So when the user says like hi at tutorialbot. And in order to do this, we have to get the bot ID. And this is just a random fact, but when messages get sent to Slack, from Slack to your application, any display name that gets mentioned in your message, it'll be translated into the bot ID. And there are different ways to do this. You could actually use a web client function to get information about it. But what I have found is the easiest way to get this piece of information and just hover over your application or any user actually. And at the bottom, a URL will be displayed. And at the end of it, that will be your bot's ID. So that's an easy way to get that piece of information. And now we can add an if statement to our function. So if at whatever bot ID is in the message, then this time it can just post hi at, and then if we wanted to mention the user who mentioned its name or the original one who posted that message event, we can go back into the message data and just get the user part. And now, as you can see here, if you say hi at tutorialbot, it'll respond hi there at Julie Karam, whoever posted the message. So now you pretty much have all the tools that you need to respond to events in Slack. And there are many different functions that are part of the web client library. And you can do other things like upload files and like find out the members of a channel. But I think with a lot of bots, they're going to end up using the chat post message function. So I thought that that would be worth going over. So next, we can add slash commands also. So what you're going to want to do this is go back to your app's homepage, and under the slash commands section, just click slash commands and then add a command. And then for this, you're going to want to name your command. So let's say we want our application to have a function called /COVID that'll post a link to the updated CDC information. And I created this bot a couple days ago before the new legislation was passed. So don't really know what's going to happen to this, but for now we can just keep it. Anyways, for the request URL, you're going to want to get your ngrok link. So whatever it was before, at the end of that, just append the command name. So after you add that, in order to program this, you're going to want to add a new app root in your app file. So you can call it @approot and then just put in the name of your command. And then you're also going to want to put it as a post method. And then again, define a new function. So we can call this COVID link. And then we're going to want to request the information that is going to be sent from Slack. So just do request.form, and then you can set this as information. And then again, we're going to be using this chat post message function. And you can add the channel that it was posted in, and then for the text, whatever you want your text to be. So that's how you create slash commands. Pretty simple, but yeah. So now we pretty much have all the tools we need to create a fully functioning app. So let's say we want to create an app that gives COVID stats when called, and we can do this by implementing slash commands to request data from specific countries or states. And while looking around, I found that there were actually a lot of publicly available APIs to get updated COVID information. So for the first one, the COVID tracking project, it's an effort by The Atlantic that aims to provide the public with the most complete data about COVID-19 in the US. And I was reading their Twitter, and they mentioned that they actually get their data from each Department of Health. So they think that they'll be able to, continue to put out data daily despite the new policies that have been placed. So you're able to get information like number of hospitalizations, number of tested people, etc. And then the next one is the Johns Hopkins Center for Systems Science and Engineering. They created this COVID-19 dashboard, as you can see here on the slide, and they post a lot of like global COVID information, so you can get stats for all different countries, and it's, yeah, very useful. So if we wanted to create an app that could do all this, we would have to add slash commands just like we did before. So you can create another bot, but for these purposes, I just added them to the tutorial bot. So we can use one called SlashStats that gives the most recent global COVID stats in SlashCountry and SlashState. And I'm going to quickly go over what all of these do. So I'm not going to go through all the code for this, but if you look on the GitHub, you can see the different files and functions that each command is associated with. But the first one is SlashStats. And this provides updated global COVID-19 stats to the Slack channel. So if you just do SlashStats, you'll be able to get information about number of confirmed cases, recovered cases, and deaths. And this is supposed to be the most recent information. So either updated the day before or the day, like current day. And this takes information from the Johns Hopkins API. And the next function is SlashCountry, and this provides COVID stats for an inputted country to your Slack channel. So if you do /US, you'll get the stats for the United States, or if you do something like /Japan, for example, as seen on the slide, you'll get that as well. And this also takes uses the data from the Johns Hopkins API. And the last function is SlashState, and this is taking data from the COVID tracking project API, and it's going to provide information for each whatever state that you input. So for this function, I did some text processing just to make sure that whatever the user inputted would be matched to the API, whatever like format of the state name it needed. So this one actually provides a lot more detailed information. So as you can see here, new cases, total hospitalized, and total deaths. And I also provided a link to the COVID tracking project page for the state. And the COVID bot was installed in the lab workspace, but I don't have it running right now. But if you end up, copying this project and doing it yourself, you should be able to try it out. So if you did all that, congrats on your first Slack app. Basically, with event subscriptions and knowing how to program for commands, you have most of the tools that you need to build any app. And there are a lot of other cool features that you can explore on the Slack API page. One of them that I've been using a lot are blocks. So this essentially allows you to design the layout of your message and really customize how you want that to look. So if you want your message to have images or buttons and stuff, you can do that. And that also brings me to the next point, which is creating interactive messages. So with using blocks, you can create things like buttons, drop-down menus, and there are just a lot of different things you can do. And personally, before this summer, I didn't really have too much experience with web app development, but while working on this for the past bunch of weeks, I have found that there are a couple points that I've been keeping in mind while doing all this. So first is to pay close attention to the data that gets sent to your app. So as I mentioned, like the fact that your display name gets changed when it's sent to your application, that was something that took me a while to figure out, but once I did, it made my life a lot easier. So just knowing and spending time to understand that kind of data is really useful. And then once you have that, how do you want this data to be manipulated? Do you want, the text that you're being inputted to be used for some other API or something? Or do you only care about if the channel that it's posted in? So paying attention to how you want the data to be manipulated, if you even care about what the message says. And also, how do you want your results to be presented? This can be anything from the way it looks or different files that are attached to your Slack's message, your bot's message. So yeah, those are just some key takeaways that I think are really useful for anyone who's new to app development. And here are some additional resources. So link to the Slack API methods that you can use, and links to the different programs that we used in our application as well. And yeah. So now I'm going to be giving a brief overview of my project that I've been working on, which is the Gene and Drug Slack bot. So this is a Slack application that provides information about gene and drugs, as well as different bioinformatics analysis tools. And the overall goal of this was to integrate information and data into the workspace while also streamlining communication with teams. So I'm going to briefly go over the different commands that these bots use. So the first thing we wanted this bot to be able to do was give a summary for an inputted gene. And while considering different ways to do that, I thought the best way would just be to create a slash command that when triggered, it would just take in the user inputted text. So in this case, it would be the gene name, and then output a summary for that gene. So as you can see here, the summary that's outputted is from the Entrust Gene NCBI database, and it takes it using the API, and it's going to display it, and also links to gene landing pages for Harmonisome, ArchIS4, and GeneShot are going to be included as well. So it can help people become more familiarized with these databases and tools as well. And the next function is /GeneSet, and this allows users to submit a gene list for enrichment analysis using the Enricher API. So for this, I have several different input formats that can be used. So the first is just by calling the function and then putting in, like, typing your list of genes, either as a comma separated list or just space separated. And you can, this is without specifying any library, but if you want to specify the library that gets displayed in the bar graph that is attached to the message, you can do this by putting your message in brackets, and the first item in the list would be the library. And since there are so many different libraries, I made it so that you can either put in the enricher defined name. So under enricher, the library page in enricher, if you just copy that name, the Slack bot will be able to recognize that. Or I also created a list of acronyms for the most recent and popular libraries. And I didn't display them here, but for example, in order to get this output, you could do /GeneSet bracket MGI as the acronym for the MGI, Mammalian Phenotype Level 4 2009 library. And your list of genes, and then the output will be a link to enricher for the genes that you inputted, and it'll reiterate your gene set and also gene count, so it'll give you the number as well. And then for the bar graph that's attached, I tried to mirror the display or the look of the ones that are in enricher itself. So in order to do this, I made it so that each color is associated with significance. So a lower p-value would have a darker color. And another way that users can input their data is by attaching a CSV file. And in order to do this, they would just have to, rather than calling the function, they would just do @GeneBot and then attach their CSV file with all the genes attached. And the reason for this is because I found that slash commands can't handle events with a file uploaded. Like when that information gets sent to your application, it doesn't recognize that a file is there. So the best way I found to do that was just to have users mention the app name instead. And for that, you can also specify which library you want to be displayed as well. And the next function is /D to N, and this allows users to submit a gene list for analysis through Genes to Networks API. And for this, the output will just be your inputted gene list, and then the number of genes, and then a network graph for your gene set as well. And for this, I'm still working on this function because it's a newer one, but for now, it just has default settings based on whatever was previously defined in the API, but hopefully later I'll be able to add more functions so that the user can define different parameters that they want to set. And the last function is the /learn function, and this outputs a multiple choice questions for users to learn about genes. And when designing this application, we decided that we also wanted to not only be able to, give information about genes and help put in analysis tools, but also promote learning about them more, because, when we work in this field, it's easy to just ignore the actual data and what it means rather than, just programming and stuff. So this is a really easy way to do that in the Slack channel. So what I did was create a list of the most popular genes, and later on I hope to add different levels, so less known genes could be displayed as well. But I also added a gene summary for them. So rather than using the Entra's gene summary, which I found could be kind of redundant in, repeating the gene name in the summary or something, I just wrote my own because I just thought it was easier and more customizable that way. But yeah, so in order to use this function, you can just do /gene, and then it'll output a question. So this case, what is ESR1? And that's estrogen receptor 1. And if you click the wrong answer, it'll say at whoever it's incorrect. And if you click the right one, it'll say, yes, you're correct. And later on, I also hope to add like a point system or time limit to this as well. Oh, so those were pretty much all the functions I have as for now for the GeneBot. And now I'm going to go over the different functions that I have for the DrugBot. So they're pretty much the same as GeneBot. There's a /drug function, which outputs a drug summary and links to additional resources. So in this case, you can do /drug and then for this example, methotrexate, and you'll get a link to Drug Bank, which has the summary for it, and also a link to the L1000 FWD page for the drug. And I made this so that there were cases when L1000 would have a gene, a drug, and Drug Bank wouldn't. So the DrugBot accounts for that, and then those cases would only display the link for L1000 FWD. And there's also a function /drugset, which allows users to submit a drug list for enrichment analysis using the Drug Enricher API. And this pretty much works the same way as the /geneset function. So format of inputs are the same. You can do typing in your drug list or attach a file, and you can also specify whatever library you want. And this also has acronyms created, which users can access by using help functions, which are also defined, and a list of acronyms would be outputted to help them better understand. And also, graph is same as before. It's color-coded by significance of p-value, and it's the negative log of the p-value that's being graphed here. So that was a brief overview of my applications. And lastly, I would just like to thank the lab, especially Avi, Sherry, and my collaborators, Alone, Errol, and Max, for helping me and guiding me throughout the summer while working on this project. Thanks for listening, and I'll take any questions that you have now.